My name is Ina Felsheim. I am from Databricks, been in the industry for a long time. And you guys, because you are so brave and came on a Wednesday afternoon after lunch, you have a surprise guest. We also are going to hear from Pierre, who's from McKinsey. And he's going to share some details and best practices of how McKinsey actually handled their data migration to a data mesh framework. So stay tuned for that. McKinsey's going to come on at the end, and Pierre will join in throughout too with questions. Sound good? Are you in the right place? Last chance to hit the door. Okay, here we go. So, migrating from legacy data warehouses, how many of you are on a legacy data warehouse right now? You are in the right session, good job. So let me just give a quick poll. How many on Oracle? Okay. SQL Server. Teradata? Netezza? No one on Netezza. Unless you're in the middle of the room, I'm sorry. Any others that I missed? Yellowbrick, okay. Is he the only one on Yellowbrick? Sorry, man. So we're going to talk today about migrating from legacy systems up into a lakehouse. And we all know that the legacy on-premise systems can be very expensive, cost prohibitive, and you have the on-premises economics that can keep you there as well. And so Forrester even acknowledges that it's not just about the cost that can hold you down for an on-premise data warehouse, but it's also about the opportunity for doing more for your business in the future, for being AI ready when your business comes to you with an AI problem or an agent problem that they want you to solve. You also need to be on a platform that is ready to handle those next requirements. And that's where lakehouses are a great fit. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that lift and shift model for migration as well as modernization. Why do you want to modernize your data warehouse as you go? And you can do it. It doesn't have to be terribly complicated. It's possible. The thing is that as you're modernizing, you also need to pay attention to your payback period, how long it's going to take you before you break even, and you want to make sure you're doing that by reducing your risk at the same time. So you're really trying to have your cake and eat it too at this point. You want modernization, you want new architecture, you want to serve AI use cases, but you also need to be very careful about your cost and about your payback time. And of course, risk. No one wants to take on a lot of risk. So let's talk a little bit about how we do that. When we look at the forces in the data warehouse market, there are a few that are really kind of holding you back and pushing you down. And a few of those are, of course, as we talked about, scale and cost. But there are a few that we didn't talk about. One is openness. Making sure that the data that you store is open and available to other systems, other types of workloads like AI and agents as well. So that data can't be locked down in a system or an application, and it can't be super expensive to get it out. So that's what we mean by locked down. AI many times is happening elsewhere in a totally different department because they're working on data that has been copied over and they're playing with it heavily, or is just separate from your data warehouse and your analytics system. We feel like this can be better as well. And of course, ETL and data preparation has to feed all of that. So the forces on the bottom that are moving the data warehouse market up correspond to that nicely. Openness with data formats, with open APIs, with ANSI SQL, all of those things that give you optionality and portability in your data, as well as having a single platform that is going to address your ETL needs, your AI needs, your BI needs, and your data warehouse all in one place. Oh, by the way, and with end-to-end governance. So those are the things that are pushing that data warehouse market forward. And there is a way to do this. There's a proven strategy, 4 simple steps here, you guys. Number 1, you need a migration partner, and you need to decide how you're going to use this partner. This should be someone who understands your company well and who has done migrations before. They can help you accurately scope, maintain executive alignment and engagement throughout your project, And they'll just be generally helpful and best practices throughout. So that migration partner is critical to get lined up in the first step. Second, we've talked a bit about cost already, but it's defining what your payback period is going to be, how long before you can break even, how long before your migration costs need to be absorbed. And this is critical because that will help you decide how much risk you want to take in the beginning, how much modernization your company has an appetite for, and it will help you decide how you're going to stage out this project as you go. So once you get all of that upfront work down, the strategy, your partner, your executive alignment, then it's time to actually do the assessment and conversion, the actual migration tooling work that can help you get this migration done. Actually moving the data, all of those things. And the last step, lots of times people don't talk about this, is then you have to repoint all of your applications to point to this new data warehouse. And depending on the complexity of your current environment, that can take a long time. So I laid out these 4 steps. Only one of them I talked about tooling, migration tooling. So there's always a point of conversation here with my tech people about how much the technical tooling for a migration can help you. What percentage of work in your migration project does the technical tooling take? So I'm going to ask you guys, this is audience participation. 80% tech tooling can take 80% of the work of your migration? Ooh, this guy's optimistic. Yeah, 80%? 60%? Nobody? One more, okay. 40? Okay, we're getting a few more. 20? Okay, you guys might be sleeping. This is usually where 80% of the people raise their hand at 20%. How many say less than that? 10%? 5%? Yeah, so lots of times we see that it's a lot about that organizational change management, the people and process alignment, and the phasing of your project that will determine its success. And you're going to hear a lot from Pierre on this in a few minutes about exactly how McKinsey approached this and how they made sure to accommodate all of the rest of those components aside from the technical tools on a migration. So yeah, 20% about the technology that will help you. In a good case, unless you're this guy, then you're 80%. You should be speaking next year. So this formula works across many industries, across company size as well. And you can see just from these few examples that lots of money saved on that hardware and infrastructure cost, lots of improvement in the way that the data is delivered and the performance of that data being delivered quickly and on time for the business. And you can see even ending clip there, systems are 50% faster by migrating up to this new Databricks data intelligence platform. So primarily, the solution we're talking about today is Databricks SQL. Databricks SQL is our open, intelligent data warehouse that sits in the data intelligence platform. Because it sits in this larger platform, it also inherits and has tight integration with capabilities for AI BI, for business intelligence, for OLTP, or transactional processing with Lakebase, for Agentbricks, which handles the building of AI applications, for Unity Catalog, which handles governance across the entire system and that end-to-end governance model that we talked about. And all of it built on those open formats. We talked about open being a key differentiator and something that you need to maintain your optionality and your portability. That's that bottom layer. So because Databricks SQL, sometimes called DB SQL, sits in this entire platform, it gets all of that capability as well as the SQL Analytics warehouse capability. And lots, like most of the best companies, are already using Databricks SQL. 60% of the Fortune 500 are using Databricks SQL already as a core part of their data workloads. Analysts love it too. We've got some Forrester results here and some Gartner results. But just wanted to highlight that Databricks SQL is an enterprise solution and has great recognition already. So that's a bit of the background, Databricks SQL. Let's talk now a little bit about that modernization that we talked about earlier, which goes beyond the data warehouse and also includes ETL. We really see 4 pillars here. We talked about cost a lot, about maximizing your TCO and understanding savings. By the way, to do that really well, you need a great FinOps practice. And lots of times this is something that is lacking, where you're only tracking hardware and infrastructure costs, which are easy, and you're not necessarily tracking workload and storage costs down to the person query budget line of business level. So that understanding that financial operations model and productizing it almost is very important to understanding your TCO at the top level. Openness and no lock-in, we talked about this a little bit as well. Making sure that with federation and integration, you can point to any system that you need, and you can get data out of your system easily. This also applies to being able to be multi-cloud instead of locked into a single cloud. Governance, that end-to-end governance model that works across any workload, whether that's analytics, BI, ETL, or AI, you have end-to-end visibility on who is using the solution and that their access is correct and governed. And of course, you need to do this all fast and predictably without a huge amount of risk, the risk appropriate to your organization. So those are the 4 pillars we're trying to keep in mind for any migration that we approach. So one of the customers that we worked with, this was their model then, of that cost saving, that first pillar of cost saving and TCO. So this is their 5-year model. I anonymized it for you, but the left-hand column there is just the hardware and infrastructure costs that they already had for their on-premise data warehouse. And on the right, you see their Databricks costs, again, over a 5-year period, but 57% TCO. Not a lot of activities you're going to do that get you 57% TCO and reduce your costs that much. Importantly, they also were at a break-even at 12 to 18 months with this project, and a lot of those costs are really the upfront migration costs that they're absorbing and then have handled in 12 to 18 months. But those infrastructure costs dropping just sharply. And you're going to hear some details from Pierre, specifically on the value that McKinsey saw and how they measured success and implications for cost as well. But it's not just about your infrastructure and your hardware costs. It's also about the cost for ETL. As your data gets bigger and as you're getting bigger, your costs are going to scale and your effort are going to scale with ETL. So you need to make sure that the solutions that you have in place are scaling with you as your data grows to make sure you're planning for that future growth. But it's not just about the size of the data. It's also about delivering it in a super timely manner. You need to make sure that you're giving fresh, real-time data to your business as they require it, and that your architecture is set up to be capable to deliver that. Openness. So we talk a lot about openness. Is openness a top priority for you guys here? I've got like 3 people who care about this. Okay. I'll just go over this very lightly then. What we mean by this is that you need to be able to get the data out of the system, and there are multiple ways that openness matters. It matters, of course, in the format. If you've been around the data warehouse world, you've seen the kind of open table format wars about, should it be Delta Lake, should it be Iceberg? It needs to be open to all of those table formats so you have full interoperability. Your data catalog needs to be open, so your governance model is open across any workload and across any other systems that might be using your data. And you need open APIs, so it's easy to integrate with external applications. But that's not it. We're not stopping there either. You also need full ANSI SQL analytics for your SQL statements. That gives you portability as you're reusing those SQL statements in other systems as well. And your ETL engine should also be open. So again, those things are portable. So for us, it's a checklist of all 5 of these things that need to be there to say you have an open system that helps you move and get your data out easily. And of course, governance. Pierre will talk about governance as well. It's a passion of both of ours. But data governance has to be a key part of any of your migration project. What does your data mean? What does good enough look like? How can you tell who is accessing this data? And that you have connectivity across the whole ecosystem of your tools, not just the Databricks system, for example. And by the way, data governance can get easier as we build in AI to help it. AI can assist you in building out documentation for some of your data fields, for example. It can help you in identifying patterns of usage, all of those things. So that's what we mean by govern at once in this open data governance system. For us, it's Unity Catalog. And then you can trust it everywhere across all of your workloads. So this is the high-level, stepwise graphic that we talk about for how you progress through a data migration project. Assess your current environment, and I'll talk to you a little bit about tools that we can use to help us do that. And then you start to define what do you want your target platform to be. How much modernization are you willing to do? How much can you do as you lift and shift if that's your goal? But really defining what you need the business to accomplish in the upcoming years. And then there's a strategy to how you're going to get there. Do you start with BI? Do you start with ETL? These choices will frame how you want to move forward in your migration project. And of course, you need to pull in the business users to help you validate your results before you actually cut off and decommission your migration project. So make sure that your business users are involved in helping with, do the results I get now match the results I got before? Did we migrate all of the data that we need? You need your business there for that level of confidence. And the fifth one is then once you migrate the data, you still have to implement, optimize, and continuously monitor that to make it faster and faster as you go to, again, feed those business use cases that we talked about. So here's an example migration plan, this one from a different customer. But the primary thing I want you guys to see here is that how parallel all of these processes are. It's generally a mistake to do it all completely in a waterfall method. Migrate this system, then migrate this system. Instead, what you see here from this customer is they're really doing this in parallel waves. They start with one region, they move that to development after they've done that upfront migration prep that we've talked about. And then they start working on the second region. So they're kind of going in parallel with different cutoff dates. We do see some customers as well, especially our professional services org talks about that first region one should be your most complicated, and your most high impact system. That if you start there, while your organization still has energy and appetite to get this migration done, you'll get a big win very quickly. And your next waves will be much easier because you've done the hardest one first. You've uncovered a lot of unstated rules, let's say, in the organization by doing that highest priority one first. So that's kind of counterintuitive. Some customers say to me, oh no, you need those lowest hanging fruit first. Pick the easiest thing first. But that's not when your organization has appetite and is still excited about the value of the migration. So our advice again is to do that highest impact, most complex job first, and then you'll start to see the speed of the flywheel as you go. So, decisions to make up front. Who here has done a kitchen remodel? Okay, what are some of the decisions we make early in a kitchen remodel? Budget, yes. What was this? What to take out, exactly. I mean, this is the first thing. Are you just replacing cabinets? Are you doing a whole layout change? What does your triangle look like? Are you knocking down walls into another room? These are all the decisions that tell you, are you lifting and shifting? Are you just putting new cabinet faces on and a coat of paint? Which has a lot of value. Or are you modernizing the whole thing? Are you changing the layout? Are you getting the plumber in there? Are you knocking out walls and seeing what is behind them? I had an 1884 house, and when you took down a wall, you found out some things in that house. So you had to be real prepared for how far you were willing to go. And that's what I'm talking about for these decisions that you make up front. What is your organization tolerance for risk and for change? How much are they preparing for in the future? These are the decisions we're making up front. So the first of those things is, are you going to take a lift and shift approach? Lift and shift has a lot of value. I'm not going to denigrate it at all. A lot of customers want to focus here because you can get it done very quickly and you feel like you're understanding exactly what you need to get out of the end. You need to replicate exactly the results that you have today. So a lift and shift, if your organization has a lot of churn and not a lot of risk tolerance, this can feel like the right path. But keep in mind, when you do that, you're also bringing with all of the bad things that you had before too. Any technical debt that you had before, that's coming with you too. Any architecture that had boxed you in, that might be coming with you too. So there are risks to doing the lift and shift, but definitely if you need a quick turn and just a quick replace and that's all your organization has tolerance for, it's a very valid place to start. The second approach is modernization. And at Databricks, we believe that we are helping you as you lift and shift. If lift and shift is your strategic choice, we can help you modernize on the way without it being a separate major initiative. And the benefits here are so profound. Everyone here, you're at one of the premier tech conferences in the world. Everyone here is concerned about AI, right? You know your business is going to ask you for AI, even if they haven't yet. And you need to be ready for that. Only by embarking on a modernization are you going to get there. You'll see here, too, some of the new architecture capabilities like data mesh. Pierre's going to talk about McKinsey, how they implemented this new data mesh framework. And they could only do that by modernizing their whole approach to data. There are, of course, challenges here because it's a bigger project and you need to make sure that you have organizational attention through that whole project. But sometimes, like ripping out the walls and changing the plumbing is good. It's just about what value for your company. But make sure you're having that conversation. And we're to the 20% of where can tooling help you. We've talked a lot about the other 80%. Tooling can help you in that profiling and assessing your current system. Tell me what queries I have, what data that I have, what is it connected to, how many people are using it, how complex are those queries. All of that information helps you make better decisions with how you're going to scope and plan your project. And that's where tools are great to help. Also, you can use tools to help you translate then the SQL that you already have, T-SQL, or all of the variations of SQL, into an ANSI SQL standard that we talked about being important for openness and portability. That translation is a great place where tools can help you as well. LLM can help with these conversions too. In fact, it's something that it's really great at because it has a defined before and after. And if you're really curious about how these migrations work, how the translation between the SQL works, in your Databricks Assistant, part of our workbench, you can just use the /migrate and interactively test. This is what my query looked like before, /migrate, this is what it will look like in the end. So lots of ways tools can help you on the translate piece. Can also help you involve your business users in that validating of the data. Did you have the same number of rows coming in as coming out? Can you validate that the query results are the same? It really gets the business involved because they're going to be the people using the system and feeling trust that the system is functioning as it should, essential before you do any decommissioning or cutover of your systems. Here's a great place where tooling can help as well. The Databricks tool that helps with this is called Lakebridge. Anyone heard of Lakebridge? Oh my goodness, I've got a few people. Last conference I did, nobody had heard of it at all. And this was my product to launch, so that's on me. But we launched this last June. Lakebridge is our open AI-powered migration tooling. And it really helps you across all of those phases that we talked about. From the analysis and assessment in the beginning, to the converting and translating of all of your SQL queries, again, using AI and LLMs to help you, to actually moving the data via Lakeflow, and validating the data with this reconciler model. And the good news is, as we talked about earlier, and you guys were telling me all the legacy data warehouses you had, A few of you had more than one. Does anyone here just have one type of data source? No, nobody does. And so it's very important that we support multiple kinds of legacy warehouses so you can really take a look at your whole ecosystem and migrate all of that to your new target architecture instead of just sort of one-off, one at a time. Lakeflow is the piece then that does the actual migration of the data. This is an open ETL tool that we use for that ingestion, transforming, and orchestrating of your data. You can use it in the migration, and you can use it in the rest of your ETL practice as well. Lakeflow ingests from many different sources, from enterprise applications, SaaS applications, to databases, to message buses, across the whole breadth of your system. I'll pause for a sec. I see some pictures happening here. Customers are using LakeBridge, again, as that 20% of the migration tooling to really help you accelerate. So the easy pieces that can be automated are easily done, and you don't have to spend time there because you're spending so much time on setting the architecture and the vision and maintaining organizational attention to this migration project. So that's kind of the theory and the best practices of how we think about migrations at Databricks. Now I'm going to hand it over to Pierre to talk to you about how it works in real life. He's going to talk to you about how they did it at McKinsey and how they established this data mesh framework.
Thank you, Aina. And I wish you had launched LakeBridge when we did our own migration. Because those tools were not existing. We had to build our own tooling at that moment. But OK, we made it. So over the next 15, 20 minutes, and we'll try to keep some time so that we can have some interactive questions, all right? I would like to share our experience leading a large-scale analytic platform, which we're calling Nebula. A journey where we migrated from a data warehouse to a data mesh house. I'd like to share with you why we decided to do this migration, how we did this migration, what was our approach, what were the actual impacts and benefits that we got out of that. Because no modernization journey is perfect, I'll share with you our own lessons learned, what went well, what didn't go so well. And I will summarize that in our last slide. So my name is Pierre. I'm head of engineering within McKinsey in our healthcare practice. So healthcare is anything which is not life science. So we're talking about payers, providers, healthcare system. Before diving in the migration, let me just give you a bit of context. And let me step back and tell you a bit more about what Nebula is. So Nebula is a proprietary platform which is used internally. It's not something that we sell to clients, something that we use internally. And that we use to support our healthcare analytics engagement. So this is where we do all the analytics. If a client doesn't have their own analytic platform, which is normally what we prefer working on the platform of our clients. But in healthcare, a lot of clients do not have their own platform. So we need to ingest their data into our platform. And this is where you're doing all our analytics to then deliver insights. And from the insight, we can give actual strategic recommendations and implementation. We also use it as our laboratory and playground to develop analytics assets, which are equipping our consultants. So whenever we do an engagement, we're coming over with our own toolbox so that we can accelerate the analytics and insight that we're delivering to clients. And last but not least, as we go into AI and GenAI, this is also where we're doing all our innovation. So our journey began more than 13 years ago, in 2013, where we needed a way to analyze and process large volume of healthcare data that couldn't live on unsecured server, even less so on laptops. So we built our first version of Nebula as a secured central analytics platform built on SQL. Which gave us, the compliance, the scale, and the protection that we actually needed. Then in 2016, this is where we did our big leap forward. So this was our first modernization, because yes, we've gone through multiple modernization. So this was our first big modernization. We actually moved to AWS. We moved to Hortonworks, which gave us even better scale, better reliability as well for all the analytics that we're doing. And this was particularly important because we're handling more and more volume of data. Then we continue to evolve the platform, introducing new automation, new features for our users, adapting to the needs that we had from for our users, where they were data engineers, data scientists, business analysts, and all the different business domains that we're supporting internally. In 2018, we achieved high trust and ISO certification. So high trust is one of the key certifications that you need to get, to be able to process healthcare and sensitive data. We also added later on SOC 2. And in 2020, we fully transitioned rather to AWS services, simplifying operations and improving performance globally. But then by 2023, after years of continuous growth, after years of adding more features to our platform, we had built some kind of a legacy challenges. And that at that moment, already back in 2022, we knew that something had to change. So here is a high-level diagram of what our Nebula platform looked like before this migration. Because we had built Nebula on the Gov Cloud. For those who know Gov Cloud, it's a specific platform for AWS. There's a lot of services that are actually not enabled on Gov Cloud. And because we had moved also already back in 2016 into the cloud, a lot of the services that now are available natively from AWS, we actually had to build them. We had to create those services, which meant that the platform was quite complex to actually manage, complex to maintain as well. And on top of that, as our business needs kept on evolving, we kept on adding new analytic tools and services, one after the other. You have a few of them here. Athena, Redshift, we even had Grid, and so on. And all those services and products were disjointed, which meant that maintaining them was actually quite a tedious task. We actually had to spend a lot of time maintaining the platform and making sure that it was working. So we reached that crossroad, basically. The platform was increasingly complex to maintain, basically. And we asked ourselves, okay, what do we do? Do we start from a blank page? Do we rebuild Nebula, or do we start from the Nebula platform that we have and simplify it? And do we partner with someone? Do we purchase a platform? Do we partner with other vendors? So that was like the whole reflection that we had in 22. And we started that migration process in 23. What we did, and I like what you said, by the way, we discussed together, right? But only when we got together, we actually compared our slides. The good news is that there was a lot of things that were echoing with one another, right? So we didn't have to adapt, which was very positive. So that is the phase basically where you develop the vision, right? What was our vision? What was our needs for the new platform? And we spent a lot of time doing user research, talking to our own users, talking about our business owners, understanding, okay, what are the objectives that we want to have and that we want to solve and improve on the platform. So the first one, that is the one that I mentioned, which is basically we want our team to focus on innovation, on inside, not on infrastructure, right? Our team managing the infrastructure was just too big, right? So we wanted to scale that team down and repurpose the team that we had to actually focus on delivering insight and building innovation. The second one, and I mentioned that several times, but I will keep on mentioning it, data governance and security is paramount for the type of things we do, because the data that we have are super sensitive. Yes, they are pseudo-anonymized data, but they remain very sensitive, and we're working in a highly regulated industry. So we want to strengthen security and governance while at the same time empowering business and empowering the different business domains that we have. So how do we find that right balance between enforcing governance while giving a bit more freedom to the domains? 3, 4, 5 were all around the users. And that was the output from our user research. We wanted to deliver a frictionless experience. There were too many hops and loops for our users to actually connect to the platform, connect to the data, onboard the data. Data onboarding was taking a lot of time. The data discovery was taking a lot of time. We wanted to enable self-service for our users, both out of convenience for them, but also in order to reduce the people that we need to have basically to support the users. And we wanted to do a lot of automation of data onboarding, automation and integration of workflows. And last but not least, we also wanted to have a platform that was future-proof. We wanted to be future-proof in order to develop new delivery model with our clients, but also be future-proof as already back in 22, Gen AI was becoming a thing. So we knew that a lot was coming basically, and we wanted to make sure that the platform that we would have would allow us to actually innovate. Did I miss? No, that's good. So after reviewing several options, we selected Databricks as the cornerstone of our platform. We did that because we thought that it was matching the key priorities that we set for ourselves and that I just presented, but also, and that's again something that you mentioned, for the openness aspect of it. We wanted to make sure that there were no data lock-in, right? That we will be able to also have the platform evolve, also be able to interact with other systems, because we do work with other systems as well. And we want to make sure that through this open data approach, we will be able to actually interconnect with different systems. We also selected Databricks because of its native support for SQL. We spoke about it, but we're also doing a lot of Python. We're doing a lot of Spark, as we have quite high volume of data. And the fact that it was supporting natively all those technology and tools was very important. And last but not least, we were already structured in a kind of medallion architecture. And with the approach that Databricks has, the medallion architecture is really core to how Databricks is structured, and that's exactly what we wanted to follow.
Let me butt in here for a sec. How many medallion architecture? Yes? You know what we're talking about there, or should we give a quick minute? Okay.
I think there are a few people, but we can quickly mention it. Basically, this is like. But yeah, go ahead. You keep me honest. All right. So the medallion architecture is basically a way to organize your data from bronze, silver, and gold layer. And basically, the bronze data is typically the raw data that you're having within your organization, right? In our case, we're getting a lot of data which are either coming from clients, but also data that are coming from third-party vendor, because we can acquire healthcare data from different countries. And then the silver layer is where you have actually clean data, so they're already organized, they're standardized, they're cleaned up. The main users of the silver layer remain, I would say, the data engineer, data scientists, and the product managers. And then finally, you have the gold layer, which is really where you will be putting your data product, right? The data that can be consumed by your business and your business owner. Anything you want to add?
Good job.
Awesome. Where was I? Yes. So now, from an architecture standpoint, we were able to meet the goal that we had, which was basically to replace all those different services that we had built over time. And we're able to replace almost all of them through services and applications which are natively available from Databricks, right? If you remember the previous slide, there were a lot of red boxes, right? Imply, EMR, and so on that I mentioned. So all of that we're able to replace by Databricks, which was simplifying a lot the work that we had to do on the architecture. The second objective was the security and governance. So what we established, which is the kind of the data mesh, and I'll talk about the data mesh later on in the presentation. We deployed what we call the hub and spoke model, which basically meant that we were able to create one hub for each of the business domain that we had, and spokes are basically workspaces that we created in Databricks whenever for each project that we have with the client, which has a beginning and has a end, whereas anything which is a hub are typically persistent data that you want to keep within our organization, right? And we're basically able to connect all those hubs and spokes and define at a very granular level who can do what, who can access to what. Typically, you will get access to a spoke whenever you're on an engagement on a project, right? As soon as you roll off of the project, you lose your access basically to the spoke. So The two first points on simplification of the architecture, security and governance were met. The other part was the user aspect. So how can we actually improve the user aspect? And you will see in the next slide that we had some drastic improvement in terms of the Net Promoter Score for our application. But basically, Databricks provide this, unified, intuitive workspace where you find all the tools that you need, and you can easily navigate from one tool to another. You no longer need to have an IDE on your laptop, run your Visual Studio to actually then connect to your data. No, you do all that from a unified interface. So that was also one of the key benefits of this migration and why we choose Databricks. And finally, from a delivery standpoint, we're also able to leverage some of the tools such as clean rooms, such as data share rooms. A lot of what we do is connecting with data from our clients. So being able to do this in a secured, controlled way is very important. So of course, you can always go with the traditional way, which is an SFTP. Right? A better way is when you can actually interconnect system and when you can actually have your client deciding what they want to share with you. That is their responsibility. They own basically what they share with you, and then we can directly load this onto the platform. And last but not least, and although we did not know at that time, but there's a lot of features that are becoming available, which are the feature basically that are allowing us to do a lot of innovation. So those will be things such as SQL serverless, which was not a thing when we actually decided to do this migration to Databricks. And we got the announcement, of course, of Agent Bricks. So kind of very excited to actually test it for ourselves. So, we do see a lot coming, and that we'll be able to leverage for bringing innovation. So impact delivered. On the cost side, we were able to reduce by 40% our core operating costs. So core operating costs were basically the team that were dedicated to building, maintaining our platform. So we reduced that by 40%. And when I say reduce that, I mean that we basically got resources back, right? It's not about cutting job. It's in the contrary, like we have our team and we're able to then assign those teams to things which are more impactful. We're able to lower down the cost of compute and storage by 32%, which is quite big. Something important as you do this migration project, and we can look at this, we also took a lot of time to actually clean our data, remove the data that we needed, right? Put in place FinOps. So this doesn't come without some effort, right? You will do a bit of saving because processes are running faster and so on, but you do need also to manage this correctly. And finally, we're able to remove all those applications and services that we had built over time and incorporated into our platform, which were generating quite some cost. In terms of impact, we were able to accelerate by factor 2 some of our process, which is what we call a diagnostic. Whenever we're getting data from a client and we want to actually do some diagnostic to identify already what are the opportunities for a given client, and we accelerated that by factor 2, which is huge. In terms of pipeline, we accelerated by 30%, 20 to 30%, the speed of execution of our standard data pipeline, right out of the box, without doing anything. And I think the most important for me was the NPS score. We increased by 50 points our NPS, so Net Promoter Score, right? How much someone, a user actually, of your platform is likely to recommend using your platform, right? So we went from 20%, which is, I would say, a very low number, to 70%, which is actually a very high number and quite unusual. We just refreshed our NPS score. We're now at 65%. So we have a drop of 5%, which I think is normal. We went from something which was really painful, from something that was great. No, great is the new normal, right? So no pressure, right? But like, if we could get back to 70%, we'll appreciate that.
What do you think attributed most to that increase in NPS?
User experience. Well, two things. So the three things, actually. Number one, people were competing for resources. Because we were on cluster, we had stories of people saying, I'm going to launch my process over the weekend because I know there will be more power available, right? With the new environment, we don't have to do that, right? Because you scale at will, right? You don't have to reserve the number of clusters that you have, you scale at will, right? So that was reason number one. Reason number two, I would say the pipeline that was faster, basically, without doing anything, which was fantastic. And the third thing, in my opinion, is the user experience. So having something which is fully integrated in a convenient UI, something which is user-friendly. You find back all the elements that should be there, where they should be there. I think that was the number one reason, in my opinion.
It's just a good one to highlight because sometimes I hear from customers who looked at Databricks a couple of years ago, they're like, oh, it feels complicated and it's only for the smartest people in the room. But there's been a lot of work on that user experience, the integration across the entire suite, and as Pierre is showing from this number, that user experience is much simpler now and much more approachable, especially as you look at new tools like Databricks One for your business analysts with AI, BI, and Genie. So lots of reasons there that NPS is going higher. Good job.
So it's an important point because we run our NPS on our core users who are data engineer and data scientists, right? So when I'm saying that the user interface is great, those are for people that are quite highly educated and well-versed into technology. At this point, we're not running our NPS score for our business analysts, right? But that is indeed something that we actually discussed over the past 2 days, which is something we've been trying to do for the past 15 years, which is how can we actually address non-technical users. That's not something that the industry has cracked yet, I would argue. I don't think there's any silver bullet. I think agentic is going to help. It's not going to be full silver bullet, but we're getting there, I think. We're getting there.
Perfect.
Right. Let's speak about the approach. We had a three-stage approach. And we did the migration in 12 months. The first 6 months is about defining the strategy, defining the vision, defining the architecture, so this hub and spoke model that I mentioned to you. Doing your user research, identifying who are your key user personas, talking to them, understanding what they like about your current platform, what they don't like, what they would like to see in the future, and aligning the entire organization between that one common objective and one common goal, which is, our next platform. How do you want it to work? What do we want to improve? And make sure that everybody is behind that project, including your leadership. Right? You need to have strong sponsorship because it will take resources and you will need to put on pause some activities that you're normally doing. It took us about 6 months to actually do this. I would argue it's quite fast. It depends, of course, how big your organization is. But for us, it was 6 months. If it has to take 12 months, take the 12 months. Right? Don't rush things. You need to make sure that everybody is behind that project. This is, in my opinion, like any project, the planning, right? The planning is the most important part. After that, if you do good planning, the execution will go very smoothly. The execution for us, which is what we call like pilot and platform enablement, we did a couple of things. First, we identified out of all our domains a few champions that would be running proof of concept on the platform. So we gave them a white glove treatment. So we onboarded them on the platform. We helped them on their engagement. We had dedicated engineers who had been trained on the new platform to actually run their project and test the new platform, test the new environment, get feedback from them. And importantly, because we choose opinion leaders, it can be a double-edged sword, right? But with the white treatment or white glove treatment we gave them, we started getting some very positive noise. People saying, wow, this is awesome. Like, we generated some excitement. In parallel to that, we set up the platform. We tested it. And step by step, we're starting onboarding users and onboarding project on the platform. The migration of the data, because that was one of the key topics of this session. The migration of the data, for us, it took us only 3 months. 3 months for 1.5 petabyte of data. Depending which industry you are, it's either big or small. But 3 months was the amount of time that we need to actually do this migration, which means that we actually run in parallel our legacy system and our new system. And on the 2nd or 3rd of January, we had a cutoff date. We said, all right, now we stop using our legacy platform, and we moved and shifted everybody to the new platform. We actually cut off the access to the old platform. That was the only way of doing it. We informed people that we would be doing so. So for some project and some teams that were in the middle of their project, we kept the access on an exception basis for a couple of more weeks, right? But generally speaking, it was like a hard shutdown of the old platform. Step number 3, which in my opinion is super important as well, is the scale and continuous improvement. So step number 3, which took us 12 months, was about deleting the old platform, right? Removing all the different components, removing all the data that we had not migrated. So we started for 4.5 petabyte of data. So even though we had a very structured and strict, not rigid, strict data governance, you know what happens? Like as a data engineer, you will keep a copy of your data still in your safe environment. So you're allowed to do that, but there's duplication of information, right? It's something which is natural, right? We took the benefit of the migration to actually make sure that we were only migrating unduplicated data set and tables. So we're able to remove by 2/3 basically the volume of data that we used to have. We kept on doing trainings for the users to maintain the momentum. As users were getting more experience with the platform, they were trying new things. So it was important to keep the motivation and keep the innovation going. The third thing that we did is that we focused during those 12 months on what we call operational excellence. So operational excellence of the data governance, but operational excellence also of our FinOps. We literally spent, and the product manager is somewhere in the room, we literally spent like 12 months building all the processes, all the dashboard that would allow us to actually monitor the different costs of the platform and to go at a very granular level. So every month we're reviewing this cost dashboard and we're able to look at, well, hang on, on this project, on this tenant, we're normally running at 10K. Today we're running at, this month we're running at 20K. Okay, it's only 10K, but it's twice the amount that normally we run at. And we engage in dialogue with the users. We try to understand. There might be a valid reason, because maybe there is a surge of activity or we're doing an important refresh. Very often, the reason why there is a surge is because someone leveraged the wrong or size of server or cluster, or had a job that ran for a very, very long time. So we engage with those. We have those discussions with users. We have those discussions with the business owners, the domains, basically, where typically, if this is an exception, it's an error, that's fine. But if it's something that is repetitive, potentially we can charge them. We have internal chargeback system. It's quite dissuasive in terms of making sure that everybody's running a tight shop. That's what I had to say for the approach. Now let's look at. I'll go very quickly on that one so that you can at least have one question. Lessons learned. First one, dedicated focus. This means that we actually set up a dedicated team for the product and the migration. So we had a dedicated product team for building the platform, for building the vision, and we also had a dedicated team for the data migration, and a dedicated team for the scripts that we had to actually develop because we didn't have those features that you presented. So we had to develop our own script to actually adapt all the migration of the table and adaptation of the SQL, the Python, and the Spark, this code that we had. Hybrid phase, we ran 2 systems in parallel, which was quite relaxing because we knew that basically the business kept on running until we were sure that the new platform was running. Stronger governance. As you go to data mesh basically means that you're going to empower your domains in an organization. right? Depending on what your organization you have. Imagine that you have your marketing team, you have your finance team, you have your HR team. They might be basically your domain within an organization leveraging the data warehouse. And you basically tell him, hey, look, you're going to manage your users. You're going to manage how you're going to structure your data. Yes, they will need to comply with the governance and so on, but you give them a lot of freedom. But with power comes responsibility. It's something for the data engineer and data scientists. They have much more autonomy with the platform. And the goal is basically show that they understand those responsibilities. Start small, so pilot high-value domains to prove the impact. I mentioned that. Clean historical data, I mentioned that. Success factor, I will mention, because we're short of time, I'll mention only one. If I had to choose, it would be you need to manage your product as a platform. You need to manage your platform as a product. Meaning that we had a product manager, we had tech leads, we did user surveys, user interview, define the different personas. For me, that is key to the success of building your platform, basically. Don't consider it as it's yet another tool. No, it's not a tool. It's a product. A product has a life cycle, a product has user, a product has personas, a product has features. So drive your platform as a product, and this will lead to success. I think we have a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
If you want to take some questions.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the high-level migration process, the tools you can use to get you started. What questions do you have for guys? We have maybe 2 minutes here to take some questions.